They tell you Burger King was always the rebel, the flame-grilled outsider, the loud challenger throwing punches at McDonald's from the sidelines. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. Burger King wasn't born confident. It wasn't born bold. It was born fragile, broke, and one bad decision away from disappearing before anyone ever tasted a Whopper. In fact, at several points in its history, Burger King wasn't fighting to win. It was fighting just to survive the week. Imagine opening a restaurant with a revolutionary idea, only to watch it crumble almost immediately. Imagine creating a global icon, then losing control of it, watching strangers rewrite your vision, dilute your standards, and nearly destroy the brand from the inside. This isn't a story about burgers. This is a story about power, control, ego, and the brutal cost of scaling too fast without a system. The story begins in 1954, long before Burger King had a crown, a slogan, or an attitude. In Jacksonville, Florida, two men named Keith Kramer and Matthew Burns were obsessed with a small burger stand in California called McDonald's. They weren't inspired by the food. They were inspired by the machine behind it. Speed, efficiency, consistency. They believed the future of restaurants wouldn't be chefs or diners. It would be systems. So they opened a place called Insta Burger King, built around a special oven called the Insta Broiler. The promise was simple: burgers faster than anyone else. Cheap, predictable, scalable. On paper, it made sense. In reality, it was a mess. The machines broke, the costs piled up, the locations struggled. And just a few years later, the founders were drowning in debt with no clear way out. This is where most stories would end: a failed experiment, a footnote in fast food history. But instead, two franchisees from Miami stepped in. James McLemore and David Edgerton didn't buy a successful company. They bought a problem, a broken concept with a name that sounded bigger than it actually was. They immediately did something critical. They stopped pretending the system worked. They scrapped the faulty equipment and redesigned the entire operation around open flame grilling. That single decision didn't just change the taste, it changed the identity. While McDonald's leaned into speed and uniformity, Burger King leaned into flavor and choice. Have it your way wasn't a slogan yet, but the philosophy was already forming. And for a moment, it worked. The brand grew, stores multiplied, revenue climbed. Burger King became the fastest growing fast food chain in America. But growth has a dark side that no one likes to talk about. Growth amplifies everything, including your mistakes. In 1967, McLemore and Edgerton sold Burger King to Pillsbury for $18 million. On the surface, it looked like a win. Corporate backing, deep pockets, national reach. But this was the moment Burger King quietly lost something far more valuable than independence. It lost alignment. Pillsbury didn't understand restaurants. They understood packaged goods. They treated Burger King like a product, not a living system. Franchises were handed out aggressively. Standards loosened. Control weakened. And slowly, almost invisibly, the brand began to fracture. Two Burger King locations across the street from each other could feel like different companies. Different quality, different service, different experience. Customers noticed. Sales slowed. Meanwhile, McDonald's did the opposite. They tightened control. They obsessed over consistency. They turned their restaurants into identical machines. And the gap widened. By the 1970s, Burger King was no longer chasing McDonald's. It was reacting to it. Every move felt defensive. Bigger burgers, louder ads, price wars that bled margins dry. Internally, executives rotated in and out, each with a new strategy, each undoing the last. There was no long-term memory, no unified vision, just noise. One CEO would push innovation, another would slash costs, another would focus on marketing, but none of it stuck. Burger King became famous for something dangerous, not for what it stood for, but for what it stood against. And here's the paradox. Some of Burger King's most iconic moments were born from this chaos. The Whopper wasn't just a burger, it was a statement. Bigger, messier, more indulgent. A direct contrast to McDonald's uniform simplicity. It worked because it felt human, imperfect, bold. But a few successful products can't fix a broken structure. By the 1980s, Burger King was once again losing ground. McDonald's had become a global symbol. Burger King felt like the challenger who never quite landed the knockout punch. Then came one of the most painful chapters in the company's history. Ownership roulette. Pillsbury was acquired. Burger King changed hands again and again. Each new owner promised revival. Each one underestimated the damage already done. Franchisees rebelled. Advertising agencies clashed. Leadership churned. The brand voice shifted constantly. One year, Burger King was family-friendly. The next year, it was edgy. The next year, it was confused. And yet, buried inside this instability was a lesson most businesses learn too late. You can't outsource identity. You can't franchise culture without protecting it. And you can't scale chaos and expect order to appear on its own. In the early 2000s, Burger King hit a breaking point. Sales were stagnant. Stores looked outdated. Younger customers didn't care. The brand felt tired. This was no longer a rivalry story. It was an extinction story. Then something unexpected happened. Burger King stopped trying to be liked by everyone. Instead of copying McDonald's warmth, it leaned into confrontation. The ads became sharper. The tone became unapologetic. Burger King didn't whisper. It mocked, it challenged, it provoked. The King character appeared. Creepy, unsettling, impossible to ignore. People either hated it or loved it, but they talked about it. And in a world where attention is currency, Burger King had found leverage again. Sales spiked, relevance returned, but even this came with risk. Shock wears off, virality fades, and without operational excellence behind the scenes, marketing becomes a mask. Behind the crown, the same old problems lingered. Franchise disputes, inconsistent quality, strategic zigzags driven by quarterly pressure instead of long-term design. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Burger King's story so far. It didn't win by being smarter than McDonald's. It survived by being different enough to stay visible while repeatedly paying the price for weak systems. And this is where the story becomes bigger than fast food. Burger King is a case study in what happens when branding outpaces infrastructure, when creativity runs ahead of control, when growth is pursued before alignment. The world celebrates the ads, the slogans, the personality. But inside the machine, the real battle is always quieter. Governance, incentives, discipline. At several points, Burger King had the better product. At several points, it had the louder voice, but it rarely had the tighter system. And systems, not slogans, decide who wins decades later. If you want to understand how global brands actually think and build systems, I've broken all these principles into a practical guide. Link in the description. Because Burger King's story isn't just about burgers, it's about a fundamental business tension. Freedom versus control, creativity versus consistency, speed versus stability. And the reason this story matters is because most people watching right now are living a smaller version of the same conflict in their business, their career, their life. You want growth, but growth exposes weaknesses. You want flexibility, but flexibility without rules becomes chaos. You want to stand out, but standing out without a foundation collapses under pressure. Burger King kept dancing on that edge. Sometimes it soared, sometimes it nearly fell off entirely. And the most dramatic chapters are still ahead, because the next phase of Burger King's story isn't about advertising wars or menu items. It's about who finally learned how to build power that lasts and who didn't. This is where things start to get uncomfortable. Subscribe for stories like this.